Welcome back to the Leeds Rhinos Podcast, episode 64. I'm Phil Daly, the head of media and PR, and we're being the off-season now. We've merged our two usual podcasts. We're going to have a bit of a review of the season, and we're also going to have a Q&A edition, and I'm delighted to be joined by our podcast favourite, Jamie Langley, looking resplendent in the new Mercury training range there, available now from all good stockists, mainly ours. So we'll hear from Langley shortly, and for those who listen to the podcast previously when James was on, brilliant insight, great knowledge on what's happening with the team. So if you're a Leeds Rhinos fan or just a rugby league fan who wants to know a bit more about actually what goes on a training field and what goes into preparing a team to play in Super League, stay tuned because you're going to get some great insight from Jamie. We'll also hear about how things are going in the off season, what coaches do during the off season. It's certainly not downtime and lying on beaches. It's a busy period for coaches. They get ready for the lads returning for pre-season. That is the case for the lads. They are on beaches all over the world at present as well. They deserve that rest after all their efforts this year. So we'll hear a bit more about that, and we'll also look ahead to the opening test of the Ashes series. We can't wait for it. Wembley on Saturday afternoon. Tickets are still available for £20. You cannot see world-class sport for £20 these days, but you can at Wembley this Saturday. If you're undecided about getting down there, make sure you're there. If you live down in the southeast of England, make sure you encourage your friends to come along. Let's pack it out. They're talking about maybe 60,000 there so far, but there's seats available, so let's get. That's not a ceiling, that's a target. So you can get your tickets from the RFL now to make sure you're there, because the boys need that support. It's taking on a tough Kangaroos outfit, so make sure you get down there. Just £20. You can't have better value than that in world-class sport, so make sure you get along to that one. Jamie, first of all, welcome back to the podcast. We've got some questions for you from the fans. They've not been had a chance to pep you with their questions yet, so we'll get to that stage later on. But just before we get into some of the details on the season, it's a couple of weeks now since it all finished. How are you? How are you enjoying the off-season?
All good, mate. All good. Always a difficult time of year as a coach is the off-season. You find yourself twiddling your thumbs a little bit, and spoke to Grixie and Chev a couple of times, and BA's obviously doing a bit of travelling with his family. He's got the boys over, Michelle and Shah over as well, so he's out jet-setting about Europe somewhere. I think he gets back around the 10th of November, give or take. But yeah, you once you obviously reflect on the season, and I'm sure we'll get into it at some point, but it was a pretty traumatic end for us, wasn't it, really? So that took a good week or so to get over, and then you start doing your own work, looking at your own areas that you feel like you need to improve, what you need to work on, what your target areas are for the next pre-season, for the next season, where your growth areas are, what you felt like you could have done better, and spent a good couple of days pestering John, our analyst, who obviously a guest of this show. John's fantastic, he's great. Didn't want to bother him too much because I knew we were going on holiday. I think he went to Bratislava and Vienna and doing a bit of travelling around there. You collate all your information from John, all your league-wide comparisons and how we're compared across the comp, really, in certain areas we feel like we can move the needle and develop, areas we feel like we maybe didn't do as well in as well. We feel like there's still some growth. So you get all that together, you compile all that information, all that data, and then it's what you do with it then, really, and try and thin slice it a little bit and be a bit more pointed about the direction you want to go in. Obviously, we'd had reviews as coaches, sat down with Grixie and Chev and BA and focused on what we wanted to go after and what we wanted to improve. Certainly from a defensive perspective, I'm very, very clear on what those areas are now. And you've also got to try and forecast and project the direction you feel like the game's going to go in. Are they going to police the ruck a little bit differently? Because there's been a lot of criticism over the ruck this year in Super League, how slow the rucks have been in comparison to the NRL. I think the Ashes will probably dictate a lot of that as well. So whatever gets spat out from the Ashes is going to dictate, I think, how the game will be policed and officiated next year. So you're just trying to get as much information as you can from the 2025 season. Again, collate it. Feel like what you can use, where you need to improve, where the growth areas are. And then you've also got to forecast a little bit where you feel like the game's going, what direction it's going, just so you can try and get ahead of the curve a little bit. Every other coach is doing the same, so you're obviously going to net out somewhere. But that's probably like the first week or 2 weeks or so of your off-season. And then once you've got that and you know what direction you want to go in, there's a fair bit of work then goes into planning your presentations and and how you can get that message across to the boys. Obviously, because numbers are a bit boring and dry, but we need to bring that to life for them. So then you get. I like to get all my presentations and get all that prep done as well. Start of the off season there, and then it's about, well, what can I do now that's going to help with that? So there's certainly some areas around the ruck and the defensive work. Been working with some wrestle coaches that I know back over Lancashire way. Managed to get a couple of boys who I'd coached previously or at different clubs now down to an MMA gym, and we rolled around on the mats for a couple of hours there, sharing ideas and looking at different techniques, and certainly how I feel the game's going to progress and develop in that area. I feel like it's an area we can really improve and be ahead of the game. So a bit of that going on. Done some work with Grixie around the transitions and the kicking with some rugby union coaches, because it's obviously big in rugby union there as well. So we're upskilling ourselves in that area, how we can improve, because we were really good on last plays last year, but how do we get even better? How do we become more of a threat? So I've been doing a bit of work on that. We're going up to Scotland in a couple of weeks' time. A few of the coaches, so we'll spend a bit of time with the Scotland Rugby Union boys and their coaches, and see how they go about the business. Certainly different, obviously, when you're prepping for international games in that short window, where it's really intense, but coaching's coaching, so there'll be definitely something we can get. But there's also some coaches from Collingwood AFL there at that time, which will be really good to pick their brains. Certainly for Grixie around the kicking and transitional elements of the game. So yeah, we just, as coaches, you idle hands, you can get up to a bit of mischief if you don't keep yourself busy. You can get a little bit anxious at this time because you're so used to a routine and knowing what you need to be doing every single day. And when you ain't got that on your plate, you think, you get a bit twitchy and a bit anxious, feel like you need to be doing something, or you're not doing your job properly as well. So there's quite a lot of CPD goes on, but it's really, really important that you get some downtime. You try and relax, try and get away from the game a little bit. So I spent some time with friends and family down in London. My partner Rosie, she spends a lot of time there working anyway, so I thought I'll take Annie down as little Frenchie, and we stayed with family and got to see loads of family and friends, so that was cool. Bombed around the city for a bit. It's like home away from home for us now is London, so that was really cool. And then we're getting away to Lisbon and Porto for a week in the next couple of weeks, which will be really good as well. Do a bit of wine tasting, and then we'll hit the ground running pretty much a week after that. So that's pretty much in a nutshell how you try and keep yourself busy during this 5-week period. Other people deal with it differently. I know Grixie really struggles. He wants to be in work the next day, and me and Gretz had to get him out and up Mamtor for a walk and just get him out of the house to keep him sane. So everybody deals with it differently. But it is important that you do try and down tools and relax and get away from it, because the season's so intense, and because of the way the season ended for us so abruptly as well. It's important that you take that time to yourself.
I'm going to say it's so hard, isn't it? Like, we go into that game against Saints, and whilst we're concentrating on that game, you're thinking, well, then Hulk out the following week, and then you're one game away from, and then it looks like even with 10 minutes to go, those plans are still in place, and then suddenly it gets ripped away in the heartbreaking way it did. It's so hard to try and just decompress from that way of being, and you've no notice for it, and there's no script for it. There's no planning available for that.
No, there's none, and because of the way it did end, and it was pretty traumatic, and we're almost in shock. It was disbelief, really, the way it transpired. And I'd certainly never been involved in an ending like that in my professional career as a player or a coach. So there's endings to games like the Hull FC one, for example, at home, which are obviously high entertainment, and there's definitely pressure there, and there's the drama of it all. But the way that game ended, it was a real kick in the guts, and I think for us certainly, everybody would have felt that. We felt it, the playing group felt it. And we were pretty much speechless after the game. Didn't really when BA addressed the players, he just said, "Boys, I can't thank you anymore for your effort and your commitment and everything else." But he just said, "I don't know what to say. Like, we're going to have to just go away and reflect on this and take some time, because I think we're all in a little bit of shock there. But that's what makes sport so entertaining and so exciting. You know, we love sport and we watch sport, any kind of sport, because you don't know the outcome. You don't know what's going to happen within that 80 minutes, 90 minutes, whatever. And unfortunately, there's a winner and a loser, and we were on the receiving end of it. It took me, a good week or so to try and get my head around it, and you reflect on it, and because instantly you're thinking as a coach, like, what could we have done better to prepare the boys for that moment? Because obviously we failed in that moment, we didn't get it right, and I was, once you'd sort of congratulated everyone and shook hands, and you've got to do that after the game. I was just sat in the changing rooms on my laptop, just trying to get answers. I needed answers straight away, like what just happened. Like, how did we get it so wrong in that moment? Not taking anything away from Saints, obviously. But yeah, I just needed to see what happened and what transpired, so I could try and digest it. And because you're thinking straight, my initial thoughts straight away were like, how could we have prevented that as a coaching staff? How could we have prepared the players better for that moment? Because we didn't get it right, clearly. And some of our most experienced players didn't get it right. But that's on us to prepare the players for that moment, to ensure that should an instance like that occur, we're ready for it. Clearly we won't. And, I spent a lot of time reflecting and kicking myself over that, and probably more than I should have done. And spoke to BA 2 or 3 days after when we had our season review, and he's like, you can't carry it like that, Langers. You've got to move on pretty quick, and just sometimes you just got to accept it and learn to live with it. But you're always thinking of ways you can be better and do better, aren't you? And it was very clear what we needed to do straight away, even from watching it back. And then you're reflecting on the week, what could we have done better with the prep in the week and to prepare the boys for it. But ultimately, they come up with a really good play to win the game. But yeah, it was a tough one to take, that, and it did take a few days. And we went for Rosie says, look, come on, you're gonna have to get out of the house here, because obviously we watched the game, we had to review it, we had to stat it, we had to do all that. Don't make it any easier. And then like, come on, hey, do you want to go out? I says, yeah, go on, let's go out. And we went to like a local pub we sometimes go to for pub lunch, and we were sort of sat in there in our usual bit, and then some like friends I kind of knew were walking past, and they like streaming past the window, and I just says, come on, drink up, we're off. I says, I can't face the conversations just yet, it's too soon. So she's like, but I'm starving. I'm like, Rosie, we've got to go. I says, like, I'm not in right headspace here. So I ended up dragging her home, poor lass. But that's, it means something, doesn't it? And we all care. Yeah. And you soon get over yourself and stop being selfish and realise, what you could have done better and what we need to do next time. And you've got to do, haven't you? Because that's the line of work we're in. And that's what we've done. And yeah, I can talk about it now because, I've moved on and time heals all wounds and all that. But yeah, it was a tough one, mate. Yeah. It was a tough one.
Yeah, and that's the nature of professional sport, particularly working in professional sport, that maybe people don't see sometimes how you carry those losses back home, and how families have to understand where we're at sometimes with that. Just looking back on the year, just looking at some of the stats there. Obviously, Jake, outstanding year. I think rightfully Man of Steel for that award is for the person who has the biggest contribution on the season as a whole. And I think in terms of that consistency of performance from Jake week in, week out, he's got those marks out after every game. And you look at some of his numbers in terms of line breaks and everything else, and also his goal kicking as well, which was outstanding. Pleased with how Jake's gone this year. Obviously, he was new to the club this year. You were new to the club pretty much same time coming in there. Pleased with the contribution he's made?
Yeah. Who couldn't be? Like, he's been fantastic for us. It's been well documented. Obviously, he was recruited, and when he first came in and the early weeks in pre-season, I remember he was more of a utility player for us. He was covering centre. He was doing some reps at fullback. He was very seldom doing reps in the halves, in the spine. So that's kind of where he was at as a recruit. And BA was very clear and very pointed with him in terms of where he sat within the pecking order within the group, and what was demanded of him and what he needed to do to not only to solidify his place in the team, but I guess earn the respect of his peers and the group as well coming in. And Jake was great. He was very receptive to that. I think he enjoyed the challenge. He enjoyed being challenged by BA and put on the spot like that. And BA was very direct with him in terms of what he demanded. And there were a bit of a rocky road through that pre-season where it sort of ebbed and flowed a bit, and BA had to give him a kick up backside a couple of times. But once he understood, I think, what was demanded of him and what was demanded from the environment and what we were trying to create, he bought in and he did a fantastic job for us. And obviously Jake, he's got a bit of a persona about him, and this personality that he carries when the cameras are on him under the bright lights, that's very different to the Jake that you see off the field. He's very, very softly spoken, very humble, loves his rugby league. He's heavily involved at Siddle with the first team there, coaching them. He's always watching rugby league. He's always coming over to the desk. Oh, have you seen this? Have you heard that? Have you? So it's just 24/7 for him, and that's what enables him to do what he does, I believe, and makes him the player that he is. And he has got special qualities as a player. The way he plays the game, he does things that a lot of other players are unable to do, and that's just unique to Jake. But the season he's had, it's a testament to him, really, how he's been able to adapt and to change probably his style of play, adapt to who he is as a person, I guess, as well, and develop. And yeah, he's been fantastic for us, hasn't he? He's been great. And you've spoke about some of the statistics there, of what he's been able to do. But to step into that half-back role is not easy. For anyone will tell you that. It's arguably the most difficult position, because you are charged with essentially running the team. You're the general of the team. So the boys have got to not only believe in you, believe in your voice, because you're the one who's spearheading everything. You're the extension of the coaches. And that's been a real growth area for Jake as well. And BA's really challenged him on that. And there's been times where he's needed to step up and I guess prove his doubters wrong and prove a few people wrong. But that's when he's at his best, and that's when he shines. And yeah, unbelievable season, and rightfully so. Awarded with the Man of Steel on the back of it. And I feel that, another year within our system, another year knowing what's demanded of him as well. You're going to see as good, if not a better, Jake Connor come 2026.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him in a full pre-season in the halves. As you say, he's a rugby league nut, and he's just thinking about it all the time. And I reckon, a bit like you're saying, how you're constantly looking for it, I reckon Jake's sat home thinking of different ways he can do things in different scenarios. And I'm expecting a big pre-season for him to be around the lads and know what he's going to do for the year. Because you think when he came in last year, I think he's the first to admit the fitness side of pre-season isn't his bag, but he gets done what he needs to get done. But I think it'd be exciting to see him start the season. In terms of other performances, anyone else stand out from you? You've looked back on the year.
I thought our forwards were really good, really consistent throughout the year. We made it very clear what we're expecting of them and what the demands are for our forward unit, both sides of the ball, and how that fits within our blueprint, and what identity they need to display week in, week out. And I'm sure everyone internally, certainly within the playing group, the staff, would agree that our forward pack delivered more often than not. And I think that were noted, wasn't it? Like externally as well. Leeds had come under a bit of criticism in previous years for the forward pack, and we eradicated that pretty early doors, I felt. And those boys earned a lot of respect this season. Keenan was really good for us. He's obviously come over from the NRL, and new competition, new challengers, and he's played more minutes and more game time, and had more on his shoulders than he's ever had in his career. Felt he really stepped up, and there were times in the year where you could see he was fatigued and he was battered and he was bruised, but he just kept showing up and turning up week in, week out, and showed a lot of toughness and resilience in that area. I thought Coops was a great addition as well. Obviously, Coops is really young. You forget he's only in his early 20s. He's not played a lot of high-level first-grade rugby, and we know he'd been on the fringes of the NRL, but had some unlucky injuries. But he really stepped up at times as well. Had a couple of knocks throughout the year, which probably led to his season being a bit inconsistent, bit stop-start. But we saw enough from him to think we've got a player on his hands there. Thought Mick's been really good and really consistent the last few years anyway, and he carried that form on. Obviously had that unfortunate injury just after the mid-season, but yeah, he led from the front, did Mick, and did a lot of work that probably goes unnoticed, but his effort area is incredible, and he is really fit, he's really robust. Did a good job for us. Jared obviously stepping into that 9 shirt. Aka's had a bit of an unfortunate season with injuries, and he had that bad hamstring injury early doors, but that just meant an opportunity for Jock, and he really stepped up and he improved his game out of sight. Certainly his attacking game as well, which is probably the most difficult part of the game for a 9. Like, he can defend all day, Jock, and he obviously got the top tackler for the comp, didn't he? Some of the boys will lead you to believe that his cost teams are running at him, but he's just relentless with his work ethic and his engine. He's got a great motor, but just the nuances of his game with the ball, thought he developed a lot, and we'll see him improve out of sight again in 2026. Lockie was outstanding for us, wasn't he? He was great. Like, he led the comp in tackle busts, I believe, and it's no coincidence that as a team, I think we were almost right up there with tackle busts, and that coincided with Lockie being in the team for us. So dynamic, so powerful, so explosive, and a lot of the good things that we do come on the back of Lockie and Jake, as you mentioned. And I thought our OBs did a good job, certainly defensively, having to learn a new system and implement and input a new system. Ash transitioning to centre were great. Ash, a lot of people probably weren't aware, but Ash got a nasty injury to his groin mid-season, ruptured a tendon in his groin, off the bone, and had a double hernia and all this. So he never really hit above 70% max speed for the second half of the season, and was still able to play at a world-class standard. Harry played more games than he's ever played in his career, and he was really consistent for us, and he's been rewarded with an international call-up at the end of the season as well. Hopefully he features in this Ashes series. So he had a really consistent season. On the back of, like, a lot of the injuries Harry's had, a lot of players don't come back from them, so you forget that. So he's been really good for us as well. And then just some of the younger players who've come into the squad. Obviously, the comp's been introduced to young Presley Cassell, who came on the scene and did a fantastic job for us when we were pretty beat up in the forwards there. And he'll go on to bigger and better things. And yeah, Riley Lumb started the year fantastically well for us in the absence of Sieves, who can't wait to get back next year. That'll be class. You forget that we never even got to see Micah throughout the year. So yeah, some young players really stood up. Some of our senior boys, I thought, actually improved and showed that they've still got growth within their games as well. And it just bodes well for us going forward, I believe. We can keep this team together. So we're another 12 months wiser now. We've had 12 months within this system, 12 months working under BA. We know what the expectations are. We've got cohesion. If we can stay healthy, there's no reason we can't improve and have another successful season.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited already. Yeah, you mentioned there about Lockie, tackle breaks, leading the Super League 195. He's the only player in the league who made over 200 metres per game on average, which is remarkable. Tom Davis at Hull KR was the next one, 191, but Lockie was on 221 metres per game. Which is just a great go forward for his team, and we all love it when he takes that little tap and steals them meters at a penalty. It just gets everyone excited rather than just kicking to touch there. Great reflection there on the season as always. Langer's detailed as hell. We get all that from you, which is brilliant. We'll go into some questions from the fans. Then we put it out there on social media to send in their questions, and we've grouped it into certain categories. We'll start with a question from Andy G on X, and he says, will the continuity of coaching and playing staff heading into 2026 mean less pre-season time will need to be devoted to installing systems of play and will lean more heavily towards strength and conditioning? We've touched on that slightly there in terms of the systems being in place, but presumably between Adam McGretton, head of S&C, and the coaching staff, there's a balance there between that fitness side of things and the skill development.
Yeah, there is, yeah. And the pre-season's planned meticulously. For BA obviously spearheads that alongside Gretz and Fergie being our head of medical there. So they'll spend hours and hours and hours in conversation about what's best practice. We'll look at where the group's at, what we were able to achieve the previous pre-season, because pre-seasons are always generally going to be similar, but they also need to have a different feel and flavour for the players as well,
Yeah.
because it can't get too monotonous. And if you do the same thing over and over again every single year, you're going to probably take backward steps. So you need to be creative in that, and we've got loads of ideas around how we can bring that to life a bit more with the creativity. But ultimately, the foundations have got to remain the same. You've got to have high levels of physicality. You've got to be extremely fit. So those elements of the programme, you can't shy away from. They've got to be in there. The players need to be fit and robust. And I feel like that's one of the areas that we probably improved the most as a group last pre-season. The lads worked really, really hard. Now, everybody will say they're working hard, and working hard is just relative to how hard you've worked in the past and how hard everybody else is working. And we certainly worked harder than we had done in the past. Like I'm aware of groups who probably potentially might work a little bit harder, but you can only push your group to what they're capable of at that time. We can certainly move the needle a bit more now because they know the expectations. They should be more robust. They should be able to handle more from that physical perspective. So we can probably run a little bit harder, run a little bit further. We can do a bit more work within the contact room now because the boys will be more robust and they know the expectations around it. So yeah, those elements they've got to stay in the programme. So the foundations around the physical elements will be there. I think what will be exciting for us as coaches is now the systems are in place. So our attacking system, our defensive system, how we transition, how we turn the ball over, all those systems now should be quite familiar to the boys. So you can probably spend a lot less time stop, start, small, medium, picture. In terms of installing those systems, what we can do is hit the ground running and put those systems to the test more. So there'll be a lot more training under fatigue, a lot more chaotic scenarios put in place from us as coaches to try and make the boys fail and learn and grow and improve faster, rather than having to keep breaking it down and stop, start, and this is what we need to be doing here, this is where you need to be here. The lads should have a grasp of that detail now, so we can really put that to the test and put them in more challenging scenarios and situations. And I think that'll be a big focal point for us going forward. And then you can see where they are at that stage. So if you just throw them in the deep end straight away, and then we can just pinpoint areas that we feel like we need to improve, or we might need to revisit this, or we've not quite grasped that just yet. So we'll pull it back a couple of steps and then we'll build from there. And I think that'll be the angle that we take and the approach that we take going into the 2026 pre-season. It helps when you've got that cohesion and continuity. We shouldn't have too many new personnel coming on board. Chev's done a fantastic job in transitions with our younger players, so all the systems and the expectations should be familiar to them. And we trained together quite a lot anyway last year, so they should just hit the ground running. There shouldn't be too much of a feeling out period for those younger players. And they know the expectations and where they need to be come day one. So yeah, I reckon we'll spend an equal, if not more, amount of time on the physical aspects, definitely, because you need to get the boys ready. And certainly how we play the game, you need to be incredibly fit. But we can probably spend a bit less time on the install and a bit more time on the scenarios and putting the boys under pressure.
Yeah, I was going to mention that role that Chev's had, and when you see the lads out there, the younger lads, people like Zach Lloyd, and we've seen Prez come through and what he's been able to do. George Brown, when they're out there, they don't know any different, do they? They're straight in the environment, their systems, they know exactly what it's going to do, and I think that will really turbocharge their development as well going forward, and we'll come to a bit onto squad depth and everything else a bit later on. Some questions around sort of the leadership and culture within the group. James Butterfield asked on Facebook, how will the coaching staff look to pick the lads up after the way the season ended? I suppose we've touched on that in terms of how you guys are doing it, but is it a question of when they come back on day one that last year is in the filing cabinet, or do we need to? Will you need to address that with them before we look forward to 26?
I think it's a case of understanding that every season has a life and a death, doesn't it, really? It's like you start pre-season and everybody's excited, and then when it finishes, that's that season done. Personnel move on. Obviously, we've got players who are leaving, but we've also got a lot of continuity. But we'll take the lessons from it, definitely, and we'll probably use it at certain stages, and we'll be smart how we utilise that. But ultimately, we start day one. It's a new group, a new challenge, a new season, and you're starting from scratch. So we'll be pretty pointed with our messaging and what the demands are. And we had a lot of conversations post the game. Anyway, we reflected as staff. We reflected with the players. So you do all your exit meetings anyway, and you put that year to bed now. And obviously, yeah, we carry it a little bit as we spoke about earlier. We're human beings, aren't we, end of the day? But we probably won't focus on it too much. It's about getting excited about what the challenge is to come. And the exciting thing is we now know what we need to do to get to where we need to get. We know how we need to do it. We've proven it. We had some really good results last year, and we beat some of the best. We beat the champions twice and almost 3 times. So we know how we need to do it. It's just about doing it consistently well enough and understanding, I guess, who we need to be and leaning into our identity even more and even deeper, which will enable us to go on and take that next step.
And then you mentioned him earlier on about taking him out for a walk to put a smile on his face. A question from Jacob Cochran on Instagram asking about how you and Grixie work together. Obviously, you're the assistant coaches there under Brad. How does that relationship work with you and Grixie?
Yeah, so Grixie and I didn't really know Grixie prior to me coming into Leeds. Obviously, I played against him. We're a similar age. I think we might even be the same age, same school year perhaps. So we crossed paths a lot throughout our playing careers, but I didn't really know him. So day one, me walking into the building last year with the first opportunity, I'd really got to introduce myself to Grixie and get to know him. I knew Chev previously. Obviously, I'd played with Chev and played against him a lot throughout our careers. But yeah, I've really enjoyed working with Grixie. He loves his rugby league. He's a real rugby nut. He spoke about similar to Jake earlier on. Lives and breathes it. His little lad Abel, he'll be under 14s, give or take. So he's heavily involved with coaching his team as well. So he doesn't really get away from it. So he's immersed in it, and I love that as well. So we have a lot of conversations just about rugby in general, about philosophies, about the game, what direction you feel like the game's tracking in, and what we've seen on a weekend elsewhere, what you feel like, might have an impact on the game or the direction it's going, or could we use that and implement it? We're always talking about CPD and sharing ideas and what he's read, what I've read, what he's listened to, what I've listened to, and just little sparks of inspiration there. But just in terms of our day-to-day jobs, so we sit next to each other in the office, which helps. So we're in constant communication, obviously. Grixie does a lot of the IT work. He's a bit more IT savvy than probably anybody else in the office there. Certainly more IT savvy than myself and BA. So he's the point man for putting a lot of the sessions down on paper and planning it and tweaking it. And I think probably killed about 5 million trees with BA in the building because he likes the paper in front of him so he can write on it and take notes. And where Grixie's a bit more IT savvy and everything's on documents and everything else. And so he's tasked with a lot of that. So we're having conversations around a lot of that stuff a lot of the time, and the session planning and the elements, what's going into that. And then we work really closely, obviously, because I've got my eyes across the defence. He's looking at transitions and last plays and how that all factors in together. So we'll have our previews and review packages together, what we've seen. Then we'll have conversations post that and how it all fits in together, make sure we're not doubling up on clips, and is my messaging aligned with his messaging in certain areas? Are we seeing the same things? Do we need to focus on the same areas? Focus on the same personnel, players, all those sorts. So we're having constant communication around the game, around what's best for the team, and then the planning elements around training as well there, and then just in terms of like CPD stuff, if I can help him in any way with because obviously been working in rugby union for a bit, I've got a couple of contacts over there, and the kicking elements of rugby union are massive. So how we can transfer that over into rugby league. So I made some good connections there across the pond and over here as well, helping him build relationships with different coaches. So yeah, that's kind of how we operate and work together, and how it all ties in.
Brilliant stuff. You mentioned your time in rugby union there. Joshua Brown asks on Instagram, what's your key takeaways from your time at Sale Sharks? If there was one thing that you learned, he talks particularly in terms of defence, was there anything you learnt from union that you've been able to implement?
There's certainly different elements that you can take and that are transferable. I think the biggest thing is it's just the scale of the operation. Certainly at Sale we had nine coaches, including the DOR, with the first team alone. So at Leeds, you think we've got BA, Grixie, myself and Chev. And then you've got your performance team. We had 9 coaches focusing on rugby. We had 2 forwards coaches, we had a transitions coach, we had a kicking coach, an attacking coach, a defence coach, you had a DOR, we had a specialist skills coach, and you had a breakdown coach as well. So it's like the scale of the operation, the amount of conversations that you're having on a daily basis. So you spend a lot of time in meeting rooms, making sure you're hashing everything out. Everybody's across everything they need to be across. All the messaging's concise. So a lot of time and detail goes into the planning and the prep. Whereas it's a bit more simplistic when you've got probably 3 or 4 blokes having a conversation. So that was probably the biggest takeaway, just holistically. Like in terms of the game, different elements like the kicking strategy in rugby union's massive, obviously, where you turn the ball over and how you can dominate territory and field position. So there's elements of that we've tried to lead into. Certainly the kick competes. You've seen how successful, I can't pronounce his name, Neo Katuazi, is it? Or the guy at Roosters, the winger who's on how successful he's been just with his aerial skills. Yeah. And you get a lot of that in rugby union. So there's lots of transferable areas there. Defensively, it's very different because the contact areas are different. Rugby union's played a foot off the ground, so everything's low. You've got to do everything low. The tackle height's low, the carry height's low. Your entry points are really low, whereas in rugby league it's played a lot higher, so you target in different areas with your entry points with the tackle. Systematically different, because in rugby league you've got the 10 metres, obviously rugby union, you're right on the advantage line there, on the gain line. But certain principles remain the same in terms of line speed, dictating, putting teams under pressure, like systems in backfield, which are transferable. So there's definitely elements that I've been able to bring across and help the group with and help our coaches with. And you've seen how successful some of the league coaches have also been going into rugby union, with Faz being probably the one who everybody will talk about. He's been really good with the Lions in Ireland, and then Mike Forshaw's done a great job, Sean Edwards as well. So load of transferable areas, and it's good to maintain those relationships as well, because there's always bits that we can nick from them, and I'm sure they'll nick from us as well.
Yeah, great to hear. A couple of quick fire ones. We'll go a couple of word answers on these. We'll rattle through them. One from Lee, who says, "Who is unexpectedly good at the wrestle?"
Jake Connor.
Oh, there you go. I can imagine that. I can imagine he's very competitive and won't be beaten. Seth Johnson says, "What's the hardest part in your job at the Rhinos?"
The previewing games, and then thin slicing that probably 20 hours worth of preview to 2 minutes worth of messaging for the players.
Favourite coach you've worked with? That's from Lucy on Instagram.
Difficult. I'll say, as a player, really enjoyed working with Mike Gregory when he coached me with England Academy. Fantastic bloke, and really loved his philosophies.
Yeah, great bloke, Mike Gregory. Sadly missed. And one, the Jack Sinster says, exercise the lads hate the most.
M runs, I would say, on field.
I was going to say M runs.
And we have them up and down off the deck a fair bit as well in the contact room. So either M runs or the burpee variations that we put them to task on, I'd say. Yeah,
that's something for them to look forward to. Maybe put down that next pint and just think what's to come. Danny McDermott asks, "Who's the class clown in the first team?"
Jock or Keenan Paliasia.
Yeah, he's really made himself at home, and I always think with overseas players, however good their first year is, their second year, they're really embedded into it, and they know they don't have to have that sort of feeling out process when they first arrive, working out what all the in jokes are. I think we can expect big things from Keenan, and particularly Coops, who's a regular mention on Jared and Tom's podcast for his wet boots.
Yeah. I think he's the recipient, I reckon, of a lot of their jokes and gags, to be honest. But Yeah, it's them two are at the heart of most things.
And then just got a couple of more quick ones. What's your favourite game you've ever played in?
Favourite game played in would be the 05 grand final. Bulls against Leeds to win a grand final.
I didn't think it was that good.
Hey, they're not easy to win, as proven this year. So, yeah, to get one was pretty special.
Excellent stuff. What's your best career achievement?
That's a good question. I think winning the £1 million game with London Broncos, going to Toronto and winning that game was, when you look at the whole season as a whole and what we had to do to get there, and not only get there but win it, I think that was a pretty special achievement. I think we did a great job there.
I was looking at a picture the other day. I think it was I was telling someone during the Toulouse-York game about the trophy. Do you remember the trophy you were presented with over it?
Mate, honestly. Like,
a ball nailed to a piece of wood.
I reckon we yeah.
I'd love to see if we get a photo to him, but
Yeah,
because if you haven't seen it before, you will not believe the £1 million game.
Mate, if you can get a photo of that, mate, honestly. I'm not like, we were, because Wardy, what is so funny, Wardy, but like we got presented with it, like it were literally like a metal, like a metal plaque on a sheet base. Somebody had welded some like prongs on it to make a kicking tee, and then they'd stuck not like even a new rugby ball, like an old used Rhino rugby ball or something on there. They'd literally forgot, hadn't they?
Yeah.
Somebody had forgot, and they'd say, "Oh, what can we do?" So they've tasked some poor souls had to come and knock that up day before, and there were another one as well. Maybe for player, like there were a boot on a similar sort of plinth for the player of the game as well. Like a used rugby boot.
Just stuff lying around.
Obviously laughable, mate. Obviously, we had it in the office back at Bronx headquarters, and it just used to get thrown about and banded about on people's offices, mate. Couldn't believe it. Yeah.
Fantastic stuff. And just finally, from Peter Queen, who was the best player you played with at Bradford?
Oh, God, that is a great question. I'd say so many world-class great players. I think that for that period of time, from maybe 03 to 06 or whatever, Stuart Fielden was the most dominant, impactful player, I'd say, for us. Like, he literally, as a front rower, would dominate games, play 80 minutes. He'd dominate the opposition pack. He'd play international and dominate people like Shane Webke and Sivan Asiva, like single-handedly. Watched them World Club Challenger games against Penrith and West Tigers, and he was, for that period of time, like Stuart was, he was just untouchable.
I remember that West Tigers game. He was the best forward on the planet. He just absolutely destroyed. And it wasn't just the power that he went into town. He just had he could have gone, if he'd have got through a gap, he'd have gone 60 metres and no one would have caught him because he had speed as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he was just an absolute physical freak, and he'd do it for 80 minutes. Like he'd be the best front rower in the comp, hands down, if we were playing today. No doubt about it.
And then just we'll go into a bit more depth now. Questions around the squad. Obviously, there's been a few changes around the squad since the end of the season. Duncan Crossland asked, which other positions will we strengthen from outside of the club this season? So presumably, I know that Ian Blease is doing a lot of work with Brad to recruit that. So without going into details on players, you think there's areas that we can strengthen the squad for next year?
Well, yeah, you look at the squad. You look at where we're strong, where we're stable, and then you look at the areas where players have vacated. So obviously we've lost a 9. We've lost Ackers, who's an international quality 9. You've lost Sammy there, who's played every game for us pretty much, and he's your go-to impact front rower off the bench. We've lost Ganza, who was our starting left edge back rower as well. So straight away there you're thinking, well, they're obvious areas that you'd be looking to recruit and strengthen. We've got Presley Cassell coming through. You've got Tom Nick Wotton, who unfortunately he didn't get much rugby time with injuries. So you've got a couple of middles there who are going to be stepping up. They're another year older, wiser, more mature. So they'll come to the fore a lot more. Losing Gans is a big one. Like you're starting left edge essentially. So you're either thinking, well, strategically, is there someone else we could move into that position? Carl Watkins, for example, who's played back row a fair bit, did a fantastic job in the middle for us. But they're areas I'd be looking at certainly, and I know Bleasy and Brad are hard at work with that as well. You've got some good young talent coming through, as you mentioned, with the George Browns and everything else. But there's certain gaps that you've got to bridge, as you're well aware of. in the immediate, because those boys, your Zach Lloyds, your George Browns, you're looking at 2027, 2028 potentially. What do we need to do in the meantime now to ensure that we stay competitive and stay strong? But also, you've got to look at the cohesion elements as well. Are these players going to be right for our environment? Are they going to fit in culturally as characters, not only on the field but also off the field, is just as important. So there's a lot of work and a lot of due diligence goes into recruitment. Fortunately, we're not in a position where we need to have a massive overhaul, are we, really? Because we've got a lot of lads who are being retained and we get a lot of cohesion there. So it's exciting.
Yeah, and similar questions from Gary Sanderson and Lorraine Savage talking about consistency talked a lot about input in the podcast about consistency within the team. There's 7 members of the squad that have left. Will that impact on consistency? Do we need to strengthen our forwards? I mean, when you look at the 7 that I'm presuming that Gary Sanders is referring to, you mentioned Sam there, and Gallo starting for us, and then Akers, unfortunately, because you mentioned injury and wasn't able to force his way back into the team. Jack's asked to leave because he wants to get a starting place, and Jack's been a total professional in everything he's done, and we've granted that. Obviously, Fralls couldn't get into the squad because Jack had elevated himself within the rankings, and then Bentos and Ethan Clark-Wood obviously came in. Mike Acevo's already filled that gap. So actually, when you're talking about the consistency of that team that starts, really Ganza as a starting left edge there, that's a big hole to fill. You mentioned that, but across the team, we're pretty consistent with what we've got already in place.
Yeah, 100%, and that's part of Blease's remit. Obviously, He's got to be at least 3 years ahead in terms of recruitment planning strategy to ensure that you don't hit a season where you're like, what do we need to do? Do we need to recruit? Some things get thrust upon you. Obviously, there's a few swerves that always come along, and obviously Jack asking to move on for other opportunities, which is fine, and we're really supportive of that. Bentos, he's left now, and so there's these things that you can't quite have a crystal ball for. That's where your younger players can sometimes come in and cover those spaces for you. Like Presley Cassell, for example, as I said, is a great utility forward. So that was the role that Bentos fulfilled for us. So Prez is going to step into that. Dominic Watton again will come back from injury. So you're confident that you can cover certain areas there. You've got a young George Brown coming through and a Ferg McCormack again, who were injured all last year, who's young halfbacks who would it'd be great to see Jack kick on, but he decides to move on with all our best wishes. But then you've got opportunities there coming through. So yeah, you always got to be 2-3 steps ahead in terms of recruitment, retention, and that's why DORs and sporting directors get paid the money they get paid. Absolutely. It's to be across that and ahead of it. So you'd like to think that we've got most things covered and most things in place, and there's always going to be one or two where you're not always going to quite get it right, because in hindsight, if we all had hindsight, we'd all be millionaires, wouldn't we? But yeah, I'd like to think we're in a pretty good position, mate, going forward with our cohesion and continuity.
Yeah, and I think if you have a look back in the podcast previously, we had Ian Blease in the chair during the season, where Ian gave a really good insight into how the salary cap works. Now we have to operate, and he mentioned in that, for those who watched it, about players when they go over 21, they come into the salary cap. That exemption finishes when they're 21. And you look down the list of players that have turned 21 or will have turned 21 from sort of this time last year into the start of next year. You're looking at Max Simpson, Ned McCormack, Ben Littlewood, Riley Lum, Alfie Edgell, and obviously Jack Sinfield was in that group as well. So they now come into our caps. You've got to find space for those. We've also got a lot of players out of contract at the end of this year. You've got to, if you sign someone this year on a 2-3 year contract, that then eats into what you're able to do for renewals for next year. So it's a devil's own job trying to get all that together. We had lots of questions about when we're going to announce new players, and this is on me, this is on you. We will announce players as soon as we're able to do that. We will announce players. Trust us. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to get players over the line. But a rumor on an Instagram or Twitter page or on a gossip column isn't a fact until it's actually done. There's a lot of legal paperwork we have to get through, both in terms of with the player, but also government around visas and things like that. And we can't announce players until all that's done and gone through. So, please be patient. We're not trying to keep secrets from you. Trust us that there is recruitment going on. Ian is doing a great job on that. Matt Cook's doing a great job on getting all that paperwork sorted, and when we're able to, we will announce it as soon as we can, and hopefully some exciting people coming to the club to add to our current roster. So I hope that answers all those questions. Just be patient, and there's plenty more to come there. Just looking ahead quickly to next year. Obviously, we've got Vegas on the horizon, and James Hall on Instagram says, "What do you think the Vegas trip means for the Rhinos?"
I think from a bigger picture, it shows that we're a club that are willing to put ourselves out there. We're right at the forefront of what this competition is trying to achieve in terms of that global status, trying to promote the game, not only nationally but internationally as well. And Leeds Rhinos are really flying that flag as one of the biggest clubs in world rugby, not just in Super League but in world rugby. And I think it's important that you've got a place on that stage to do that. So I think that's really, really important for the club. So it gets the club exposure. It shows what we're willing to do as an organisation. So Leeds has always done that really, really well. As a playing group, it's really, really exciting, obviously. The lads will be buzzing for that opportunity to go over there, and it's a new environment. It's going to be exciting. There's going to be loads of distractions. There's the travel element to contend with, obviously. We saw how it affected Wigan and Warrington the previous season. So Cookie and Bleasy are going to go out there and do a bit of a recce, I believe, next month, and just make sure we've got all our ducks in a row and there's going to be no swerves or surprises when we do hit the tarmac out there in Vegas. And it's obviously going to bring challenges with the travel elements, and you're going to have the fixtures either side of that, and then the knock-on effect that it might have potentially further down the line with the fatigue elements. But we've got to do our best, haven't we, and deal with that. It's just going to be the nature of the beast, and we've got a really good performance team. We'll manage that to the nth degree to make sure that we give ourselves the best chance not only to perform well in that game, but to perform well in the games that follow. But yeah, it's just a really exciting opportunity to be involved with, and I think as soon as it got announced, like there were a few rumours floating about internally whether it was going to happen, and as soon as it got announced, like there were a real buzz about the place. So we're all really looking forward to the challenge and can't wait to see what it's all about. Yeah,
and it's like, as you say there, rather than just going through the treadmill every year of doing the same thing, that is something different that's going to come next year. It's the challenges. It's a good thing. You talk about the challenges of the travel and everything else. Wigan and Warrington did it, and credit to both Wigan and Warrington. I know we've said it before. They've been really open about what did work, what didn't work for them, what they would have done if they were going again. So we can lean into that experience, and it's going to be a great occasion for the sport of rugby league, as is the Ashes over the next month, and we'll come on to that very shortly to finish up. Well, just a couple of ones, just for you personally, a bit more light-hearted. Danny Leeds on Instagram asks, can anyone lift more than you at the club?
I'm pretty sure they can, yeah. My heavy lifting days ended after my second or third shoulder reconstruction when I was about 21, I believe. When we first started at Bradford, it were all about, the phrase was, there's no such thing as overtraining, it's just under-eating. So we used to train like hard, lift heavy, lift big weights in the gym. I was 18 years old. I was about 112 kgs. I was benching 185 at 19, and then my shoulder fell off at that point, and various other I had groin reconstructions and a couple of knee surgeries, and I'd had 4 shoulder ops later. My lifting days are over, so it's just all about maintenance these days. Yeah. So I try and keep my hand in. Obviously, you don't get much spare time when you're coaching now. But whenever I can, I'll try and get a session in. But the boys, I wouldn't even be able to get anywhere near some of these lads nowadays.
You'd certainly, your biceps get a lot of mentions whenever, particularly when you came on with the vest the other month. Glenn Tomo asks us, how big are your biceps?
I've no idea, mate. No idea.
Big. Just set with big. And then, of course, we can't finish off without our usual section on the Q&A edition, the Brodie Croft section that we like to do. Brodie should have more things to do with his time, but he likes to send in questions. Have you tried on the training singlet yet for 26, he asks?
No, but I will be first in line, as Crofty well knows, when they hit the shelves. Collars me every single day. If I've got a jumper on, he's disappointed, Crofty. It's like, where's your vest, Lang? As if it's -10 outside. Yeah. The expectation is I'm there in my vest, so I'm happy to oblige.
Very good. Well, he'll be happy because his second question is, will you be wearing it on day one? So it sounds like that's a yes, Crofty. And finally, he suggests, is it true that you get your vest tailor fitted?
No, that's not true.
But it's an idea.
It's an idea. It's an idea. We can nip and tuck it if we need to. One of my good mates, actually, Wayne Godwin, he ruptured his bicep and tricep in the same game against, I can't remember, it might have been trying to tackle Feka Belliacina or something. Did his bicep come off, went back on, did his tricep. So he's got like all his bicep and tricep are all bunched up. And Wagger, anyone who knows Wagger, is one of the most vainest blokes you'll ever meet. So he gets all his left sleeves tailored in around his bi and tri now, so he's not got a baggy sleeve on that arm. But no, I've never gone as far as that.
There you go. Good mention of Wagger there. He's going to be playing again in the 7-4-5 game down at Gloucester, which is a fantastic occasion. Dual code match, hybrid game. Stars of Rugby League and Rugby Union going head to head down at the King's Home Stadium for a great cause, supporting 3 M&D causes. Tickets are on sale now. Search for the 7-4-5 game. Wayne was involved in that last year. He bit off a bit more than he could chew. He started running at some former rugby union prop forwards, and it was a bit of a mess. But he's game again. He's been, if you've seen his stuff on Instagram, he's been whacking wheelie bins to get ready for that one down at King's Home in a couple of weeks. That's the day after the third test here at AMT Headingley down there. If you're down the southwest and get along, it should be a great occasion there. Which brings us neatly onto the Ashes to finish up on. First test at Wembley on Saturday. The Aussies have named their team. They've put all their cards on the table and said beat that. England have announced a 19-man squad. Shaun Wane's keeping his cards a bit closer to his chest. What are you expecting from the first test?
I think it's going to be really, really intense. I think it'll be one of the most intense games a lot of these players will have played in. I feel like it's going to be really attritional. It's going to be tight. I can't see there being more than 4 points in the end result. I'm struggling to pick a winner. There's a bit of me edging towards England. I feel like if we're going to win one out of the first two to bring it to the decider here. I mean, it'd be great if we could win the first two, wouldn't it? And Headingley would a bit of a dead rubber. But I feel like this is the one. Wembley Stadium, we've got a great history there. I remember going down as a young kid and watching the games, and Jonathan Edwards and your Sean Edwardses, your Alan Tates and Fires and all them in the early 90s. And it's going to be that kind of an atmosphere. They're expecting potentially 70,000. I think the Aussies, they're obviously an exceptional outfit. We know that individually. Can they come together collectively? Like, they'll play a very low-risk style of rugby, I believe. They always generally do. I think they'll rely heavily on completions and field position and territory on the back of Cleary's kicking game. And they're going to be really, really physical up front. But I believe that with our backline, we've got a really athletic, explosive backline. And our forwards have always been able to match it with the Aussie forwards anyway. I feel that's an area we've always had parity. So based on that, yeah, that's why it's going to be a really close encounter, really intense. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Obviously, the majority of the fans are going to be behind England as well. So that's why I'm finding it hard to pick it. But if I had to put my neck on the line, I'd sway towards England, and I'm going 14-8.
Yeah, very good. In terms of that Australian side, anyone who had the privilege to watch that NRL Grand Final, the chance to see Reece Walsh in the flesh at Wembley is worth the entrance fee alone, I would have thought. Yeah,
all of them players are superstars, aren't they? They're all household names, certainly over here, but as are our boys. Mm. But yeah, I agree. It's an opportunity to go and see some of these spectacular players that you only get to see on a weekend on Sky TV or whatever broadcast channel you subscribe to see them in the flesh. And it's rare. It is really rare, but it's even rarer to play against them, and that's why I think our lads will be chomping at really excited. When you look at that last Ashes series, and I were at every single one of them games as a young kid, and the aggregate score, there were no in it, were there? I think there were like 2 points, 4 points within each of those games. And yeah, it's just we can always match it. When you put our best against their best, when it gets funneled down and filtered down to that, we can always match it. But it's, it's their level of competition week in, week out, what probably just trumps ours a little bit. I certainly feel like we've got the capability in the squad to compete in this Ashes series, and I really hope we can get one over on them.
Yeah, and for all those doom-mongers out there who are going, well, it's going to be over after 5 minutes and it's all this. I remember back to 2003 and going into that series, and no one gave Great Britain a chance. It was the same whingers and moaners were saying, oh, this will be a white. And it did end up 3-0, so yeah, well done. But those games, they were in the balance to the final minutes of every game, and the Aussies were given the fright of their life in that series.
Yeah, 100%. And international games have got a different feel. Certainly when they're over in England here, certainly at Wembley. So you're going to grow an extra bit of confidence. You just don't get fatigued or tired in those games. So it just comes down to moments. It's going to come down to moments. Yeah, they've got some quality players, but as have we. And yeah, you're not guaranteed Reece Walsh to come up with a performance like he did in grand final. Who knows? It's rugby league. It's sport. What can happen? So yeah, it's pretty well matched, I think. It is well matched, and yeah, I'm really, really excited. It's just a shame I can't be there. Obviously, I'm going to be on holiday this next week, so I'll miss the first two, but hopefully get down to Headingley for the last one. Yeah,
so you mentioned there about players made for the big stage. I think Mikey Lewis, after the season he's had, he won't fear anyone, will he? He'll go out there, so we can't wait to see how England get on. It's going to be exciting times. Langers, brilliant to have you on as always, and thanks everyone for your questions. Hopefully that's answered some of those there for you. We'll continue with the podcast during the off-season and infrequent basis, so make sure that you subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Push that notification button so we can let you know as soon as the new episodes drop. We'll have some exciting stuff coming up over the next few weeks. We'll also be catching up with the squad when they're back in the next few weeks. Not long now till pre-season gets underway. We'll take you under the skin of pre-season. You can get to know how the lads are getting on, just how tough it is for them, and what they're up to on a weekly basis. But for now, thanks for joining us. Great to have you on board for the Leeds Rhinos podcast. Good luck to England at Wembley. If you've not got a ticket, get one. If you're going down there, be loud, be proud. The boys need it. This is going to be our factor against the Kangaroos. They don't have the sort of noise we have in the atmosphere we have in England over in Australia. When they come out that tunnel, let's blow the socks off the Kangaroos so that they know they're here for a fight, and wishing the team all the very best. We hope they can get the series off to the best possible start, and then that sets us up nicely here at AMC Headingley for the third test and winning back the Ashes over the next couple of weeks. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time, and for now, all the best.